Good evening, family. Greetings again. It is day 3 of the Louisiana presentation from the Ashe Cultural Arts Center. Our last time being with you this particular session, but definitely not our last time talking about the importance of our climate, the importance of our land, and paying respect and honor to that land. Louisiana, again, is a 3-part series focusing on the past, present, and future of New Orleans and Louisiana's complex relationship with land, culture, and climate. My name, again, is Frederick Wood Delahousie. It is my pleasure to serve as the Chief Creative Officer and Artistic Director of the Ashe Cultural Arts Center here in New Orleans, Louisiana. I can be referred to in conversation by Wood or by pronoun he and him. I am a light-skinned, honey butter brown black warrior poet with brown eyes and thick eyebrows. And what some folks call a goatee, I like to call a pharaoh's mane. And it's very important for me to be with you this evening. I'm a New Orleans artist. I live and breathe culture. It is the soundtrack to our lives. It's the tone of our existence. It speaks to the history in all of us and lays tracks to our lineage, our roots, our neighborhoods, and this nation. To live in New Orleans is to plan a part of our lives around festivals and second lines and super Sundays. We open our windows and discover an ancestor has fallen because the music says that we must pay homage to those who have gone before us. To live in New Orleans is to have an intimate relationship with culture and rhythm, and we walk to a beat that sometimes only we can hear. And New Orleanians and Louisianians all know that we are a magical, mystical, musical place where we sing and dance because celebration is not only beautiful, but necessary in every bit of who we are. And it is my honor again to welcome you to day 3 of our 3-part Louisiana series. And as always, we begin by paying homage to the land.
I wish to begin by giving thanks to the Creator for the many gifts bestowed upon us. I wish to acknowledge the truly indigenous, the flora, the fauna, and all of our non-human relatives. I acknowledge all of the life forms that preceded our own existence and continues to make our lives possible today. For in our teaching, we the people are the youngest members of creation. I want to acknowledge the ancestors and the elders, their wisdom and contributions from our past, continuing to our present with their wisdom, always guiding us to our future. It is an honor to speak to you. I am of the Atakapa Ishak Shiwasha people, indigenous to the southern regional lands and waters in the place that today is known as Louisiana. We mark our continuous inhabitation, numbered by countless centuries, on these, our ancestral lands, always living between the mighty river and the great Gulf. Our story of origin began with the waters. We continue to live by and depend on the waters to this present day. We are water people. We are one of the many First Nations who marked our time of existence and continue to live our lives in this region, still indigenous in our life practices, serving as stewards on our tribal and traditional lands, working to protect and preserve its bounties, gifted into our care as a sacred trust by the Creator. Many changes have come to these lands. There are newcomers who today lay a claim of ownership to our unceded lands. I will say to them, stating the names of the first inhabitants of these ancestral lands is just the beginning. The responsibility of stewardship now resides with you. It is a sacred responsibility to do all within your power to protect, to preserve that to which you now lay claim, not for self-enrichment, but as a legacy to the future generations. Know that we, the first inhabitants, will continue to work alongside anyone who willingly steps into stewardship. We're all descended from indigenous people from many lands across the globe. And for our collective future, we must stand up and step up to use the wisdom of the elders, our collective knowledges, and will to work to heal our lands, to clean our air and waters, work to return balance to life. This can only be accomplished if we remember that we are all called to stewardship. What we do today will be revealed in our tomorrow, and our tomorrow depends on how we live today. The great circle is real. In closing, I quote the wisdom of an elder and a very wise man. And he said to us, enough is abundance. And in gratitude, I thank the Creator for that abundance. The blessings to everyone. Thank you.
My name is Sarabia. However, that is and is not my name. I am from the Tlingit tribal nation. I'm a member of it, which is from Southeast Alaska, roughly what is called Juneau, Ketchikan, Sitka, Wrangell, Petersburg area. And we share that area with the Haida tribe as well as Simpsons. Names in my tribe originally came and belonged only to families. My real name is Sonia. That name goes back about 2,000 years, handed down from generation to generation within our family. And we, all families, particularly traditional individuals from my family, can trace their names and their origins to an individual. The one that started, and it was a female who created it, obviously. Her name was Gartei, which in English means the woman who raised the woodworm. And that is my family name, Gartei. And whenever I am around, I carry, or sometimes I'll carry the symbol of my tribe, my family. It's not my tribe, it's my family. The one of my tribe is different. But so traditionally, my name, Juan, really belongs to my family. But in this modern world, the mortality rate of us Tlingits and natives in Southeast Alaska has jumped considerably. When I was young, if you hit 45 and 50, you were old. You probably would die. And one of the reasons behind that was we lived off the land and the water. Tlingit in English means tides people, water people, or fishermen. I remember people ask, oh, did you ride horses on them? I never saw a horse till I was about 25, and that was at some kind of fair, county fair. And, a lot of people, again, who believed they were experts on Indians, would tell me, oh, you Indians ride horses. Well, no, not all of us. So anyway, my name, Juan, is as sacred. Yeah, I can trace my name and my family back at least 2,000 years.
Alito, Omasia, Ayutpeche, Miko Omas, Okata Ansihili. Bien merci, bon Dieu, bien merci pour Audrey. Hello, I'm Chief Propeller, United Homer Nation. And I just want to say thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you and welcome you to the United Homer Nation land. On behalf of myself, my council, and my tribal citizens, we welcome you.
Yiltol, Anhike Jeffrey Dahrensberg, Takapo Ishak Yukitiki. I'm Jeffrey Dahrensberg of the Atakapa Ishak Nation of Indians. And the Ashe Cultural Arts Center, where I am now, is located in a place that Native people like me have known for centuries as Bolbancha. It's a word in the Choctaw language meaning the place of other language. This place Bolbancha because it was a frequent trading and cultural interaction zone located between three bodies of water, Lake Oquata, Bayou Shupik, and the river Bolbancha, which this part of the river is called. Bayou Shupik you might know as Bayou St. John, Lake Oquata you probably know as Lake Pontchartrain, and of course the Mississippi River, another indigenous word. Here in Bolbancha, people traded and danced and sang together for many centuries before the first French incursions into the area. Indigenous people still live here. Members of the tribes that were here originally still exist in this place. This was a trading zone for over 30 different groups, including the Tunica, the Biloxi, the Homa, the Chitimacha, the Choctaw, Washaw, Shawashaw, and many other groups, including my own tribe, the Atakapa Ishak. During the early days of colonization, chattel slavery was introduced into this area, beginning with Iberville's first visit. He mentioned wanting to bring slaves here. Indigenous people were trafficked and enslaved in this place. African people were trafficked and enslaved in this place, and mixtures of the two as well. The legacy of indigenous populations here exists not only in members of tribes such as myself, but also in our Creole population of mixed ethnicity people. There are also many indigenous people who have come here from so-called south of the border. They are indigenous as well, and the Americas are their home. Thank you for listening, and please do not forget the indigenous peoples of this area. Do not forget the word Bolbancha. Bolbancha is still a place. Bye.
Thank you so much to Elder Rosina, Brother Edward Sarabia, our dear Chief Coco Crapel, and of course, Dr. Jeffrey Dahrensberg for that inspiring land acknowledgement and just historical lesson. One of the panelists this evening is a dear brother of mine and a true freedom fighter, every sense of the word. Not only have I known him to be a freedom fighter for just Black liberation, but now see him as a freedom fighter for liberation of the land. So we'd like to share a little information about one of our panelists, our dear brother Sage Michael.
Lincoln Beach is a place that we all want to open for the community, by the community. This is a simple exercise of democracy. This is owned by the city of New Orleans. We are the city of New Orleans. The people that cook the red beans, the people that make the gumbo. This water called Dwata. It's not a lake, it's an estuary. This land, we find artifacts that I know our ancestors cracked open them clamshells with. This is a place that a lot of neglect happened, a lot of racism happened, and they left it alone since 1965. We found it. We want that place to be open for our community by the community, with equity and inclusiveness, where the people of this community benefits. Many people gave their lives for this place right here, and it's been held back. And we just want people to open the doors and allow our community to walk down that path and touch that water. This land right here in New Orleans, Louisiana, is where Black lives matter. We want to have the decision making of this process. We are not being excluded out. We are not taking us away. We will take a stand here. We are taking a stand here. I'm here. As long as God give me breath, I'm here. We are here. We are the community. We are the leaders. We are the ones with the power. I love our community. We need this place as a sanctuary because we're dying over there. And I know that this is healing over here. I love this over here. All right, this is God over here. This is church right here. Church without walls.
Yes, yes. For more information, please do visit New Orleans for Lincoln Beach on Facebook and follow our dear brother Sageville New Orleans on Instagram and all his different pages to learn more about how you can be part of the process of restoring Lincoln Beach, not only to a place of celebration and entertainment, but a place of historical relevance to our people and to our history. Giving thanks to Brother Sage. And then, it wouldn't be the Ashe Cultural Arts Center if we didn't have a touch of art in here, right? So this next piece we want to show is a piece that came about because this past year has been one of many challenges. This past really 18 months, right? It's been one of many challenges. So we shared this right now. And this is our dear sister, Sonia Patterson, and another person you might recognize.
And when they read of this moment, they will see how we endured, and they will wonder how we made it, how we could live through such a time and still smile, create, and celebrate, even though walls of panic and loss continue to build up around us. So they will shake their heads in astonishment. They will question how we survived without hugs and second lines and community gatherings, or they will drum up every conspiracy theory, and most of them will be correct. They will feel the anger of the era, the frustration of the season. They will pick apart the science and discover to their surprise, oh, there was so much more hidden. This virus was a disguise. They will tremble at the revelation, and tears will come to their eyes, for they will see the essence of being in the living and those who died. Or when they read, they will see how this time provided a shift in foundation and frequency, how it challenged outdated systems and let go of antiquated beliefs, how we were forced to grow our courage and practice care in the midst of grief. Or when they research about these days, from the uprisings to the downfalls, they will unravel the knots, they will connect the dots, and they too will heed the call with dignity and integrity, ancestral wisdom and pride, where creativity and imagination move head and heart into alignment. And they will know, because they will feel the power and presence of devotion and will, of culture, of spirit, of justice, of light, of oneness, of harmony, of divinity and insight. Or when they read of this moment, oh, they will see how we endured, and they will still question how we made it. And we will say, well, how could we not?
Well, welcome again to the melting pot, where resilience still the recipe, where we grieve and dance at the same time. Well, have you seen us second line?
Yeah.
Seen us celebrate, seen our culture survive through centuries of misery and outright hate, through the system and the sacrifice, through the pain and the prophecy, through no parties and no parades, through a year that felt more like a decade.
How could they be so overwhelmed and downtrodden? When so many have fallen, though none are forgotten, how could they still smile and shine? But when you've lived through this pandemic of injustice for all your lives, how does one not rise? How does one not stand? How does one not think of themselves and their fellow man? How does one not dream in color and fire, in faith and truth, in sweat and honey? Oh, can you taste the resistance? Do you hear the reckoning? Feel the righteous eruption boiling in your veins. Close your eyes and bask in the winds of change. When mass multitudes stood defiant, with fists and hearts held high, with dignity and deliverance, perseverance and pride, walk with the strength of ancestors in our stride, stood shoulder to shoulder and screamed like Sonny P. It is not yet our time to die. O defenders of life, healers armed with hope, warriors of warmth and compassion who never hesitate to spring into action. Oh yes, when you think of these times and wonder how we survived, know that we held each other close from a distance, but love each other nonetheless. Felt freedom on our fingertips and kept our hearts open and outstretched. Know that our playlists lay thick in the rhythm of recognition. Our taste buds tantalized with the sweet and savory of tradition. Know that we lived and we listened. We practice healing and forgiveness. And the word on every tip of every tongue. Parted lips to simply say, thank you.
Well, all right. Well, all right. Setting us up with a beautiful art burst, my dear sister, Sonny Patterson, along with my dear brother, Vic Yacom, and yours truly. Truly was a labor of love to put that piece together. But we understand that, we use the words for healing. We use the music for healing because we are a city of healing. And tonight's conversation also is about healing. It's about how we move towards the future of this conversation. We know that we've preached to the choir. We know that we have, talked about a lot of our issues, but we also want to be solution oriented when we have these conversations. So tonight we're joined by some phenomenal folks who will be on this panel. Oh, and popping up first is our dear sister, Sherelle Blazer, as my brother, Sage Michael. And I believe we also have Patty Ferguson. Bonnie is here as well. Good evening to you folks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It has been a truly a pleasure to be with us these last couple of days to talk about losing Louisiana. And when we say losing, it's not just about the land, it's also about the culture and the people. And so we want to encompass all of that into this conversation. And first, I'll let everyone kind of introduce themselves. And Sister Sherelle, I'll start with you. Go on, tell us who you are, even though we learned about you so much last night.
Oh, sure. Now, I hope that my sound is okay. I'm actually not in the country. So again, and there's a little bit of a lag, but so if there's a problem, just signal me. Okay. I'm the Senior Director of International Climate and Policy at Sierra Club. I'm also a community activist. I am, a spiritual, cultural practitioner. And I've been an environmentalist for a really long time. And so I'm happy to be here. Thank you for including me in this conversation.
Thank you for being here. Dear Patty, give us a little piece about you. Professor Patty. Go ahead.
That's okay. Hi, everyone. Bonjour. My name is Patty Ferguson Bonney. I'm a member of the Pointe-au-Chien Indian tribe. The Pointe-au-Chien Indian tribe is located southwest of New Orleans in Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes. And I teach Indian law at Arizona State University. I run our Indian legal clinic. And my areas that I focus on are voting rights, status clarification of tribes, and environmental issues. And I do a lot of work with Pointe-au-Chien and other tribes in the southern bayous of Louisiana.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. My dear brother Sage Michael, Mr. Pellet, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sage Michael. I advocate for Lincoln Beach. I'm a community organizer and advocate. And Lincoln Beach is my baby project right now. I'm holding down for the community, been representing for the last almost 2 years now. Also, I'm on the action table of a collective of organizations called Gulf Sulphur Green New Deal, but we fight for environmental justice and other things along that platform. And I'm so excited to be a part of the conversation today with the other panelists.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here. I want to start this conversation really just talking about, healing. Sherelle, we know that, your work as you got this phenomenal title as an atmospheric chemist, but I know you as, as you mentioned, the cultural practitioner, the Ancestral Festival and all these kind of things that you take part in, that the work goes beyond, what happens policy-wise and what happens on the page, but it really speaks to people and how people can heal. And I think all of us in this conversation have been there. So talk a little bit about that work and how you kind of see, the overarching work is also meaningful on the local level where people's really healing themselves.
Yeah. So the healing, policy is one thing, it's everything is necessary, right? Like writing better policies, shutting down polluting industry, advocating for communities, for frontline communities, all those things are super important. But then also like the spiritual aspect. If you're not bringing in the spiritual basis, then you're missing the bulk, right? It's like what do you call it? It's like an iceberg, right? Like that little bitty part on the top is the policy and but you have to connect it down into the spiritual basis. And yeah, the reason why we do the Algiers Ancestral Festival and why I do the Black Wall Street Memorial March and Galveston, Sankofa, all these different things is because that is the healing that communities and the earth need, right? Like, so not only words on paper, but also connecting in with spirit and making sure that, communities have to be holistic. They have to be healed. It has to be a place of joy and happiness. It has to be a place where we are nurturing and feeding each other, not only physically, but in all those other areas that mean so much more. When people look at us, and I hate that word resilience, so I'm not gonna bring it into this. But when people look at a folk who have been oppressed for so long, and then wonder how are you keeping on? How are you still thriving? How are you happy in these conditions that have been created in order to annihilate you? And it's like, it's the spiritual basis, right? It's what keeps us all going. It's also what keeps the ecosystem going, despite some of us doing our worst. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, thank you for that, Patty. We when I first read about some of the work that you do, you've had these great victories, right? But I know that those victories, as Sherelle mentioned, on a higher level, they mean so much more to folks. On the ground. So if you could, first talk a little bit about those victories, but also what does it mean to the actual people who you're able to touch and see, when these decisions are finally made?
So for me, I feel like we're taking baby steps and we need to be running, right? So we have some victories, but things are happening around us that are faster than we can catch up with. But, just joining on something that Sherelle said that makes me think about what's happening in our communities right now with Ida and responding to the climate issues is that we now have state recognition, which I think is, one big victory for us. And, I think recognizing who we are and paying that respect is so important. But the next level is we need that federal recognition, right? So that's a step, but we need to make these larger steps. And some of the things that I think other people feel who are engaged in this work is that we need to be part of the conversation. So we're trying, now we're gaining some momentum, but a lot of times decisions are made without input from our communities, the frontline communities, indigenous communities when there's something in your backyard and you're not even, have that conversation. And so we have to try to elevate those issues. And even by having this event and allowing to speak, that's a victory, right? Because then more people know about what's going on and we can have coalitions and move forward, because as you know, Sherelle mentioned, is, you know, people didn't expect for us to move forward. You know, the whole point of federal policy and colonization was to get rid of us or assimilate us. So even just being here is a victory. And we want to encourage our young people to, you know, continue to recognize who they are and respect that relationship with the land, and to overcome all of the oppression that is coming at us. So I appreciate, you know, that I'm here, and I thank you for having me being part of this conversation.
Thank you, Brother Sage. You know, I'll move this comment to you because I know you and I have had this conversation around healing for, you know, many moons when it comes to not only just our people, but now with you in terms of the land. So, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, what does it mean for folks to be healed by those waters at Lincoln Beach?
Thank you all for having me. Definitely, I just must say that personally, I was called to the water for healing myself. When Arbery unfortunately lost his life, I visited Lincoln Beach prior to that, back in the 90s, when I purchased my first home and, you know, moving around. But when Arbery unfortunately lost his life, and that trial's going on right now, and COVID hit, I needed healing myself. And so I was drawn to the waters, and then finding that place of beauty. I always find I see beauty in it all. You know, one man's trash is another person's treasure. But at the same time, when I went there, I saw a vision of the potential of Lincoln Beach, and one bag at a time. I just can't. I wasn't raised not to be accountable for my environment around me. And so, you know, my parents raised me not to ask who's going to do it, and then figure out a better way later on. And so I just started one piece of trash at a time, one bag at a time. I shared it with my supporters who I've been building over the years, you know, in the cultural community. I've been a barber for over 30 years with that. A lot of people started admiring what I do. And I said, just use simple principles, let my light shine before men, do not hide my light under a bushel. And I just continuously reach in my community and try to continually deny myself and figure out what's the best for this very impactful project that it's on our shoulders, and that I'm doing my part to help move it forward. So it's a healing place for me, and I want to open those doors eventually for a healing place for all.
I shaded that, brother. I shade that. You know, that leads me into the concept of how do we, you know, make this thing be a collective healing, right? You know, like we know we all have our passion projects, and all of these things are important to us, but all of these things are connected. There's so many of us that are working in silos about different different topics, but at the same time, we understand, you know, systemic injustice. We understand the ways in which, as you mentioned, Patty, that these things happen, right, so that we could be, and Sherelle also mentioned it, be annihilated. Like that word in itself is a word that is, you know, talking about the extinction of people, right? So, you know, so Patty, in terms of how we can become more aware of all the work that you're doing and be able to connect that work, you know, to some of the work that Sherelle is doing and the work that Sage is doing, you know, how do you see those things connected?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot going on that we all don't know about because we are working in our silos, because there's so much to be done. And so even by, you know, coming together through this environment, I hope that we can continue to work together to support each other's work by knowing about the different communities and organizations and what they're working on. So, I mean, I encourage anyone to go to our tribal website if you want to know more about our community. But there are a lot of tribes in the state of Louisiana. I think there are 15 tribes in the state of Louisiana. And it's important to work together. So since, you know, we work with some groups out of New Orleans, but it's great to know what other people are doing and working on. Our tribal website is www.pactribe.com. And we have opportunities for people to volunteer. I think there's an Indigenous conference that Tulane hosts in the spring. But any way where we could bring together and celebrate our differences while supporting each other, because we have a lot of things in common. We have to realize those commonalities, and then also realize that we're all working towards a collective path. So in our community, we're always looking out for the future and future generations. And I think that's a different mentality than the Western mentality, which is the now. But I think that some of our sister organizations also think that way. They're thinking of the future and providing for the future. And when we're thinking about the environment and what we can do for the environment, we have to think about making changes now for the future, because we see what the past has done and how it's impacting in the future. And I think sharing that collective message is important.
Beautifully said. And then, Sherelle, in terms of connectivity, your work, we last year for Louisiana, we connected with some folks on the continent in Kenya, and we saw those resemblances, right? We saw those, those issues that we know so well that they were also going through. So, could you give us an update on those folks that we connected with? Speaking of connected.
Yeah, in fact, I saw most of them just now at the UN Climate Conference, but we weren't able to coordinate and make of it. What we wanted to do is get together and do a video update, but I wasn't able to make that work because of people's schedules. But yeah, we came together to see. I went to Kenya maybe 3 years ago to work on. There was a coal plant that was a Lamu coal plant that was in the works. And so we met with Save Lamu and Decolonize and Natural Justice and 350.org and a bunch of other folk working to stop this from moving forward. And it did. So we were successful in stopping the coal plant from moving forward. But there are still coal mines in Kitui that, there's the danger that that coal might be harvested. And what we need to do is keep it in the ground. But the largest threat right now is the East African crude oil pipeline, which many of the folk who were working on the coal plant have pivoted to, because for all the same reasons that pipelines are dangerous here. It fouls the land and water. It's people's, the rights to fishing have been all but destroyed in Lamu. It is it's a historical site, a natural site, and but even more than that, I mean, that pipeline is dangerous to the entire eastern coast of Africa, and so a lot of our friends are now working on that, and we're trying to help with that as well. And you know what? I just did a video with my friend Omar detailing how folk here in the diaspora can come together and help with that effort. And I can share that information out. I don't have it at the top of my head. I am so sorry, but I will share it out so that we can continue to work together. Because the first time I went to Lamu, I walked out there and I was like, this is so much like Plaquemines. I mean, it was so much like Plaquemines Parish. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, okay, this is reminding me of home and the fishing communities. And my family is, family of fishermen from Plaquemines. And yeah, there were just so many similarities that, and there still are. So that connection is really important and can only grow. There's so much to do.
Yeah, the diaspora is funny that way, because the Ashe team just had an opportunity to visit Louisa, Puerto Rico, and the entire staff had a chance to go down there and do this cultural exchange trip. And I mean, like you said, there was moments when if the ocean wasn't there, you would have thought you were in the ninth world. It was like, come on, man, like this is home. Just the music and the culture and the people was so much resemblance of what we go through each and every day. And Brother Sage, I know, in your travels, especially in terms of, getting around culturally, you have made so many significant moves in the culture through your art, as well as, like you mentioned, you know what I'm saying, you're a barber. A barber is where we fellowship. That's why people come together to fellowship, where we come together to learn about becoming who we will be, because we center ourselves around this community. So, you know, man, talk a little bit about your connectivity with the community and the vast community of, you know, the global things around Lincoln Beach.
Thank you, Will, for that. I started exercising my community collectiveness after being a barber, you know, coming into the poetry community. There are some very skilled wordsmiths out there that carry the torch. I express myself the best I can. I'm more skilled at bringing people together and highlighting people's story, coming up with creative ideas and doing that. So I did it at Ebony Square, Sweet Lorraine's, and then we started working together with the community projects. We did the Poetry Block Party, Black Arts and Cultural Fest. We did the community gardening tray made with a solid divine back in the days with Pizzazz Productions. So I started exercising community building. Nowadays, bringing up to Lincoln Beach, you know, coming together and bringing together people is an exercise. And after the movement of leading the major cleanup of Lincoln Beach, which we did not get credit from the government entity that could write the story on it, but you know, and that's about not inclusiveness. We talked about that before. But what I do is I write my good. I look for inside the community, because we have everything we need in the community. You know, we build the world. So I know there's everything. And so I do exercises like right now. Clean Up Lincoln Beach was an exercise, you know. In Christianity, Christ washed people's feet. And in that aspect, the simple thing we do is clean the beach. And from that movement, we started cleaning up our community. And I started partnering with other people, because I know togetherness, together, collectively, everyone from every walk of life can come together and clean up. And so that's a commonality. But that thing is not just clean up physically, it's clean up environmental, it's clean up your spirit. It begins an exercise of how can we come together for a cleanup that includes other purposes. So I started partnering with, outside of the Lincoln Beach movement, I got with a collective organization called Gulf South for Green New Deal. And what that is, that's a collective of organizations dealing with the environmental justice from Florida to Texas to Alabama, and across the 5 states in Texas and Mississippi. And we have hub leads, we have financial sponsors and facilitators, we have tables, a communications table, an action table, and a policy table. And I'm on an action table for the restoration of Lincoln Beach. So we collectively come together with our resources and we try to advance a Green New Deal for our region, which is very impacted by environmental injustices across the world. So with my Lincoln Beach project, I try to bring together people from specifically 3 different aspects: environmental justice, economic justice, and environmental, economic, and historical justice. Black and inclusiveness for Black Indigenous people of color. Exactly, to be specific.
I shade for that, brother. You know, and I'm trying to paint this picture with y'all answering these different questions about, you know, because all of y'all are real heady, right? You know, we got a professor, we got an atmospheric currency, we got a land estuary steward. You know, we got these different things that you all do, but at the same time, you know, we want to make sure that the community understands this is not an elitist conversation, because this affects you in your everyday life, right? So as we, you know, I want to pivot a little bit to, you know, so we know the challenges, we understand what's happening. You know, what can we do on a day-to-day basis to support you all better in your work, and also be a part of those organizations? I know, Sherelle, you mentioned you share a petition or some of the work that those folks are doing in Lamu and some of your other work. But you know, Patty, how can we, you know, be on the ground with the Pointe-a-Chan folks, with the Attack-a-Eshak folks, and making them and understanding that their well-being also affects our well-being?
Yeah, well, right now, Pointe-a-Chan was the second landing of the Eye of Ida. So only 10% of our homes are habitable post-Ida. And we're currently in the response phase. So we still have debris that hasn't been picked up. We have still people who are trying to break their houses down. So you can volunteer if you want to come out and help someone clean up and the next stage will be rebuilding. But we are working towards rebuilding resiliently and sustainably. And we're also part of the Legal Justice Coalition. The whole tribe is, and the different tribal leaders are part of that, to try to deal with the inequities in climate force displacement and other inequities in federal policy. So people can join in that effort to advocate for more equity and response and rebuilding, and how they treat people of color and people of low income, and how they value your homes. And in this rebuilding process, our homes, was a Category 4 storm, but our homes used to be palmetto houses on the ground. Now they're 12, 15 feet up in the air, but they are not made to withstand the force of hurricane force winds. So we need to rebuild resiliently so we can withstand the force of those winds. People want to stay because that's our cultural heritage. Those are our lands. And that's the same across the bayou communities, across the South, the indigenous communities, the other historical communities on the Gulf Coast. So people can volunteer. They can, join the Legal Justice Coalition's efforts to change policy. They can support us for federal recognition. And also, if they want to donate, they can donate to our GoFundMe. We have a GoFundMe. So there are a lot of different ways that people can help out.
All right, we're gonna get all that up in the chat for you folks to understand what's really going on. Brother Steve, I know you got something happening tomorrow, because I know I got to give you some money to for something going on tomorrow. But tell us about how we can support the work, bro.
Well, I would say the supporting our work is that, strategically speaking, the beat's kind of specific. It's an act of democracy, and it's about self-actuation, where we don't depend on them, but we go for us, what we can do today. And I would say that there needs to be community vision sessions for the future development of Lincoln Beach. As we sat with the future Claiborne Corridor Innovative District and had charrettes, and I felt really empowered by that process, and that I would like to, as soon as possible, get this message to Sharon Robles, who is the project manager for the Lincoln Beach project under the mayor's administration right now. She is the point person with the project, and that we need to definitely expedite the process of the master plan for the community, and that process need to be brought together as soon as possible. And so what we can do is email her at CROBLES at I put it in the chat so we could provide it to the listeners. But that's the point person on the project right now. I would like to have that. Also, advocate for immediate litter abatement system at Lincoln Beach. I have spoke with administrative officials several times, and at the end of the day, we need a litter abatement system needed activated at Lincoln Beach. I have led massive cleanups and have myself and other supporters, including Reggie Ford, who is an artist in our community, does excellent job committed to the project, along with myself and Trisha Wallace, who is the president of Lincoln Beach Advisory Committee with the City of New Orleans. Between us three and other supporters, we have been volunteering our time to preserve our site. So our site needs preserving during the time of planning and construction, and we want to see that immediately done and advocated for. It's simple trash pickup. We want to have those resources applied to our site to preserve our site. And lastly, there needs to be a community connection with Lincoln Beach in the organizational structure. I spoke with the mayor in the past, had definitely meetings, and I believe in people keeping their word. We talked about it. She affectionately calls me the mayor of Lincoln Beach. But engagement and empowerment are two different things. And we talked about appointing me as a community coordinator for the project. And and everyone knows I intentionally earned that position because from advisor of community members like Oliver Thomas, I spoke with and people who guide me across the process, say become an expert in in a project, know everything about it, and that's what I've done. I've spent my time, I've volunteered, I expanded the process. I represented the Lincoln Beach Project, volunteering my time, I think, because I love it so much for our community, and it will save our community. And if we do it the right way, it will be such a benefit. I don't want Lincoln Beach to be a project that someone developed for us and we go pay admission. I want it to be a point of pride project where we all came together and brought it together from all walks of life. It doesn't have to be like Six Flags, but I want to see our community build that place together. Where the funds come out that place, get reinvested back into our community. Where the contracts is first source our city. Where we create jobs out there. Where we have delinquent problems with juveniles, we give them opportunities to come together with mentors and help clean Lincoln Beach, help study it. We engage the process. There's so many things that we can bring to the table. But if we don't have the empowerment of those who literally in charge, then we're going to hold the grounds like Hunters Field was held down by our great Jerome Smith, or like Congo Square is held down by Congo Square Preservation Society, or how the indigenous people still hold their land down, like we went and saw with the Atapaka Ishak people, and we did that relief effort down there. So I'm holding it down for all my Arbery in our communities that's dying in New Orleans East, and we just need equity inclusive in our city. That's our last stand. And for me, that whole 17 acres is where Black Lives Matter in New Orleans. Bobancha territory, to be more specific.
I see, brother. Well said. Well, Sherelle, you know, I come to you because you mentioned last night in our conversation that we have the answers, right? We already have the tools that can help change this climate conversation. So Sherelle, tell us, solve the climate crisis for us.
Wait, okay, say that last part again.
I was just kidding, but no, tell us about some of these tools that we already have and we already possess that can help pivot this climate conversation for us.
Man, there's so many. Like all the answers. You know, it's the thing about being siloed in our approach. You know, like if we're talking about something sustainable and holistic, that means all the different answers coming together. I mean, we're all practitioners of nature. We understand that there isn't one thing that's happening and that equates to good health or good feeling or a healthy community or, you know, spiritual healthiness. So, I mean, it's all the things. I mean, we have to have a decarbonized economy. We cannot have economy based on the same things that are sinking our communities. We have to have, I mean, all kinds of renewables. There's so many right now, and they're much cheaper than fossil fuels even. And so bringing in solar and geothermal and, you know, whatever it is that can work, there needs to be a mix of things. And then also acknowledging indigenous peoples, but then also acknowledging cultural practices, all the different cultural practices that go on here, because everything you love about Louisiana and everything everyone loves about New Orleans is because of the cultural practice of the people here. And so that needs to be acknowledged, and it needs to be practiced unfettered, right? Like people cannot come here and want to stop the music or want to stop the cultural practice and spiritual practice that happens here. That's one of the things that makes the city sick, when we can't practice the way that we need to. You know, sustainable agriculture, the fishing needs to come back. I mean, if we stop, you know, there's still too much polluting industry here, and we give that industry too much power in the political process. But we know how to replace that with other kinds of industry. And so if we court those other industries and we create an economy not based on petrochemicals and not based on fossil fuels, that'll go a long way toward healing. But like I said, it has to be all of the above. It has to be all the things that we're talking about, all the panelists are talking about on here. It all needs to be happening in concert.
I see. Thank you for that. We have a couple of questions from Happy Horse. Happy Horse has been with us every day of this conversation around losing Louisiana. So his first question is, what would it cost to get representation from multiple organizations in a room with City Council discussing the future of NOLA and holding them accountable? Says that I see you leaning in.
It said, what would it cost?
Yeah.
Commitment, intent, scheduling that time in your day, taking that moment to live with intent for an hour, standing as a black man when there's a rally, come out and just stand there and listen. It makes a big difference. Your presence alone makes a big difference. So doing the simple things, I try to keep this simple. I don't like to complicate it because it's simple. Find one thing that you like to do, research an organization already doing in some kind of way, it exists, and support them in that capacity that you can do. And more support for these organizations that already exist, it'll come together. These things that you are doing right now, bringing us together, it's a part of it. There are ideas that transpire on this call right now that's going to bring fruit to the table from this conversation. I know that. We are all working in silos, but we're one body just developing ourselves because there's a lot of work to be done. And we have those opportunities that we create like this to bring together and broadcast to the world that together we are strong. And we are all included, no matter where you came from, no matter what you've done in your past. If you commit with intent to write this book with us, then that's all we need. Self-determined people live with intent to make our communities a better place. And we can work together. I could work with that.
Thank you, brother. I think what's so inspirational, about, Patty, about our native family and friends and our African, diasporic family and friends is that deep connection to eldership and to ancestry. And but we have another question from Happy Hearts about how do we get the youth involved, and how do we make sure that the youth are involved in some of these conversations. So in terms of your work, how do you all make sure that this work transpires not only from the folks in this call, but some of the folks who the next generation will be important to them? I'll let you grab that one, Patty. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, in our community, we have a culture camp every summer focused on, enriching the tribal heritage with the culture, arts, history, everything, just embedding in our young people that they're proud, they should be proud of who they are, because, Terrebonne Parish for a long time didn't recognize or support Indigenous people in any way. They would not even allow us to go to school. So we're in a process of re-educating people that we even exist. And it's important to provide our kids that support, because it wasn't until the late 1960s that Indians in Terrebonne Parish were allowed to go to schools, like integrated schools. They weren't even a high school, right? So we need our youth, we need our youth to be confident and be able to speak on behalf of our individuals and also recognizing where the wisdom comes from, looking towards the ancestors and the elders. So we incorporate that in our culture campus, not just for youth, the elders are there. And we've had a few that have engaged in broader things outside our area, but not that much. I think we need to do a better job of that, building, so they could learn how to build coalitions as young people. So I know that we can do a better job of that. And, if people have ideas here on how we can do that, I would appreciate that. The other thing I was just going to mention is that Sherelle's at the UN Climate Conference, and or she went to the UN Climate Conference. It's over. I went to COP25 and I participated virtually in COP26. But, it'd be great to know who from Louisiana is going, to the COP. And also, it's really hard to get those badges to get youth involved in some of these things, maybe even on the local level, so they can see what's happening and how they're connected to the world, I think is important, because we have a lot of similar issues, and I think that could help inspire confidence in them.
Well said.
Can I just say one thing?
Please.
I just want to say that the youth are involved. I mean, maybe not in our individual campaigns, or maybe so. I don't know. But I know for sure on climate, the youth are definitely leading the way. you know, when we talk about preserving this for future generations, I mean, they are clear on the fact that if we don't get this together, that in the next 20 years, where they live right now might not be there. You know what I mean? Like this is what they've lived through. This is their lived experience, you know, having to rebuild every year, having to leave every year, being out of school at odd times of the year because, you know, there's been a storm. And so they're like, they're wired in a different way. You know, at COP26, the Youth Climate March and the Climate Justice March, I mean, this idea that we need to be running, I think people my age talk about it, you know, not like it's still an option, but we're still not moving with the urgency that the climate crisis demands, but they are. Like there's no option for them, and they move like there's no option for them. So all I do is try to support. You know what I mean? They marched my butt all over Scotland. I was almost crawling at the end. Like, okay, all right, Mama, oh, come on. But yeah, it was like they were on it, and the way that they were outside of the COP, like there were 40,000 people inside of the COP. There were over 150,000 people outside of the COP. And that energy just made it such that you had to be doing all that you could. You know what I mean? Like they were undeniable. There was no such thing as not being accountable. There was just no such thing. They were undeniable. And that's how I feel about the youth. Like we need to figure out how to get on their wave because they're moving.
Thank you for that. So there you go, Happy Hearts. Look, the youth are involved, so we just got to share this information and make sure that you know, folks can really move forward with this information in an intentional way. You know, because a lot of times, you know, we talk to hear ourselves talk. Folks don't the intention of listening, right? You listen which for your opportunity to speak next, and not actually intently listening to what folks have to say. So I think, you know, that this Losing Louisiana conversation has always been one that we've tried to put forth just to kind of spark the conversation. But at the same time, I think that, you know, as the artistic director, I'm going to make a commitment now for Ashe, and I know Asali will back me up on this, that we'll keep the conversation going, whether it be monthly, quarterly, weekly, whatever we have to do to try to make sure that folks understand that this climate the word crisis is attached to it for a reason, right? It's something that's here. It's not something that's foreboding, right? It's here and now. So I'm going to bring us into a close. We've had a great conversation. So you know, I'll give each of you a moment to close out and give us a word of wisdom or some advice or some instructions, some directions, all of those good things. Give us all of that. And let's start with Sherelle. Let's start with you.
Let's see. Oh gosh. Okay. On the spot. I don't know. I'm happy to, you know, consistency is what it is for me. So I was really glad to hear you say that, you know, we're going to continue to have these talks. I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. I thank everyone for watching. I thank Ashe for putting this together. I'm really happy to meet the other panelists, and I'm looking forward to continuing the work and figuring out how we can collaborate. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. Brother Sage.
Hi, thank you for an excellent conversation. I will close out with this, civic engagement. This is what we do. This is where you get activated at. Self-activating force is what we need right now. So we just keep focused on my social media content. You know, we have my Facebook group called Sageville. Also, I have my Instagram, Sageville_New Orleans. I post a lot of content through that, and I really reach out to the public through that for now. But civic engagement is the way to go, especially when we talk about the youth leadership. And that's what we want to see happen, more civic engagement. I want to see more people at these meetings. I want to see more people submitting their public comments. We're going to keep setting examples forward and moving forward. Our ultimate goal with Lincoln Beach Project is establishing a community benefits agreement for the project to be adopted by the developer in the city of New Orleans. So that's the strategy we want to work with, and that's what we're going to need to help with moving forward. So just stay tuned. on all the moves that can happen with the official assessment and development on Lincoln Beach. And I look forward to engaging with my community on Lincoln Beach and outside of Lincoln Beach in our communities.
Thank you. Sister Patty, what about you?
Yeah, so first of all, again, thank you for inviting me and allowing me to be here and giving me the space to share. I just ask people to lift up my community as we rebuild, and to support those communities that are in the process of rebuilding, who really need to heal. And the people who've come from outside of the communities have really been a blessing, because that's really the only way we've had any work done, is from the volunteer support of individuals who just decided they're going to drive to Pointe-au-Champ or Ile-Jean-Charles and help someone in need. And so we have to remember that we all are connected, and that, you know, showing that support, it can be meaningful, or is meaningful to people, especially when they lose everything. And with that, I would just ask everybody to, you know, lift up their prayers, but also generally commit to some sort of action for something that you believe in, because we only are going to have change whenever people engage. So thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. This has been a spirited conversation. You know, we've heard some jewels. Y'all have dropped some jewels this evening for folks to move forward. And you know, and you know, I think if I was to wrap it up, you know, it's really about making your voice be heard by those in power around these conversations, as well as respect and protect the land, the green spaces. You know, we talked a little bit about yesterday about reducing your energy usage, and a lot of things that we can do daily, you know, ourselves to just try to cut down on our just leaning into Mother Earth a little too much. You know what I'm saying? We are leaning on Mother Earth a little too much, and you know, she's gonna lean back. It just is what it is. You know what I'm saying? So I thank you so much, panelists, for joining us. I mean, y'all, I can't say it enough. Clap, clap, claps all around. Clap, clap, claps all around. And I want to end this conversation by bringing in another dear friend and dear sister of mine who can really, really, really wrap all this up with that topic that we began with, right? This topic of healing. What can I say about Mama Sula? She is singer, songwriter, spiritual healer, priestess, lover. She shake her finger at me at times. You know what I'm saying? If I'm doing a little too much, she does it all and does it well. Mama, thank you so much for joining us. And if I can pass you, I would love to pass the floor to you for you to bring us that healing.
Yeah,
that we all need.
It's my honor to be here, and I'm so glad you're talking about my favorite topic, which is Mother Earth and preserving this planet and our part in doing so. You know, you see I have Asasiya right behind me, Mother Earth, and in the Ghanaian tradition, we call her Asasiya. There's mothers, you know, known by many names, but the presence of the mother has really come upon the planet even more seriously in the last 10 years. Of course, she's always been present. All of our indigenous cultures know that the first name of mother has been, first name of God has been mother in many of our indigenous cultures, but we've lost that, which is why so much respect has been lost for the land, for the water, because we're no longer connected to the nurturing of her, the nurturing of us in this reciprocal relationship that we have with her. And so I'm so glad you all are having this divine, intelligent conversation about her and about our responsibility to her. You know, even when we see other people litter, and even if we don't do that ourselves, it's so beautiful to just make us all accountable. So, you know, brother, you might want to think twice about throwing that down, or, you know, here's the garbage can over here, or, you know, let's not throw that in the water, you know. So there are ways that we can kind of tap on each other's shoulders. But I feel like the healing of this planet has a lot to do with our spiritual responsibilities. Yes, it is the physical for sure, but also getting back to what our ancestors did, which is praying for the land, praying over the water, you know, praying that every seed that we put in our pots or in the earth will grow, and that we can begin to grow food for each other and for ourselves. So there's so many ways that I just love the way people are awakening, not just the youth, but many. But I'm really happy for the youth awakening to this consciousness, excuse me. So let us close with prayer like we know how to do. Anytime I speak about the mother, I just feel filled with grace. And that's what the Mother Earth, she fills us with grace. And she is the womb. If we can see the earth as the womb, then we will take better care of her. You know, if we can see the earth as our primary source of all that is, then we would take better care of her. So I got on the call about a half an hour ago, and I heard some of what you all were saying, and it's just very beautiful to see the direction that you all are thinking in. I'm very proud of that. Very happy for our community that we are awakening. So I would like to close with prayer, calling in the divine Father, Mother, creation, known by many names. So by the power of all that's holy, we come. We send healing vibrations to everybody in this call and earshot of this call, and let that ripple into the rest of the world. I thank you right now, Holy Mother and Holy Father, for making us conscious beings that know our responsibility on the earth. I ask you right now that you would increase this knowing in all of us, that we would be awakened to a new way of thinking and being. I ask that we pray over all waters, that we not waste water. I ask that we put our hands up to the land and the water and the people, and that we send our godly light and holy light out to everybody. It is my prayer that we all be well. It is my prayer that the Mother daily gives us hugs and loves us and fills the empty places in us that may be present. I also pray that in our discussion about land and water and responsibility, that we not forget to teach the children these things. So we're praying for the consciousness of our youth to even be more sharpened. I pray right now for land. I pray that we acquire land. I pray that we be able to buy land in other countries, that we'd be able to buy land right here to build all the things and the divine institutions that we have in our consciousness. I pray that we take better care of each other. I pray that we're more respectful and loving towards each other. I pray that we put a death to backbiting and negative vibrations towards each other. And I thank you right now for making us part of the human race, for making us part of humanity, this beautiful woven fabric that we all are a part of. May we weave into each other, may we fall into each other, and may we be able to respect each other's boundaries as well. So Holy Mother, known by many names, I love you, and we love you. And we pledge our love to you today in this conference. We need you, and we need to do good on the planet. So we thank you, and I pray that Asasiya, Mother Earth, I pray that she comes to bless everyone. And there's a song for Asasiya that I wrote. And Asasiya, again, is the Ghanaian name for Mother Earth. There's also another name for her. We call her Obatampa. Obatampa, the good mother. I salute Obatampa. I also salute Yemaya Oya Oba Oshun, all the Mother Isis, Mama Chamba of Senegal, all the divine mothers whose names we know and whose names we do not know. We salute Mother Mary and all the divine names that we know and that we do not know. So I pray that Asasiya comes to bless us. So this is my song to Asasiya, and I pray it blesses all of you. And it goes like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Asasiya, we honor you. Asasiya, we trust in you. Asasiya, we love you. Let your healing light come shining through. Asasiya, we honor you. Oh, Asasiya, we trust in you. Asasiya, we love you. Let your healing light come shining through. Asasiya, we honor you. You ready? Jesus, Allah, Krishna, Buddha, Orisha ancestors, we're calling to ya. Asasiya, we honor you. Asasiya, we trust in you. Asasiya, we honor you. So this is Asasiya behind me. May the earth continue to be our medicine, and may we continue to be medicine to the earth. I love all of you, and I thank you for loving me. All the kindness and love that I receive is just part of this healing medicine that we all need. So may God be with all of you. May the Mother of Creation continue to be seated with you in your houses. May she pour wealth upon you. May Mommy want to take treasures from the bottom of the ocean and all the mothers, and may they bring them to the shore that we can receive, that we can bless others, that we can buy land, get water that's clean, and never be without. And I'm really, really praying for our children, that Asasiya blesses this earth and all the children on the earth. Thank all of you. And may the Mother of Creation be with everyone, and the Father of Creation. Ashe. Thank you.
Ashe, Mama. Thank you so much for that blessing, for those inspiring words. I give thanks for you each and every day. That you had a moment to just come share with us. I give thanks for that. So thank you so much. All right, family, as each and every night, we try to leave you with a piece of inspiration or a piece of knowledge. And our sister Imani Jacqueline Brown, who was with Ashe for some time a few years back, is now a part of a different organization across the pond, as they say, doing some phenomenal work. But while she was around, this was always kind of in her spirit to work on, environmental racism, to work on the folks in Death Alley, to work against all those things that we've learned about that we may not know each and everything about. So we want to offer this as we close. This is a film that was put on. There's so many collaborators on this film. The Center for Constitutional Rights, the Center for International Environmental Law, the Descendants Project, Earthworks, Healthy Gulf, Human Rights Advocacy Project. I'm trying to remember as many of them as I know. The Midlow Center was in New Orleans College of Law. So many folks were involved in putting this on, along also with Whitney, the folks at Whitney as well. So we offered this piece to close with tonight. And again, please visit the Ashe Cultural Law Center. If you'd love to become a member, you can learn more. Oh, look at that. For more, visit AsheNola.org to be a member and be able to support us in doing more of this work and support our efforts in the preservation and promotion of not only the culture of New Orleans, but the culture of the diaspora. And also these kind of conversations, but these conversations feed into what the culture has been and always will be for us and by us and with us. So we leave you tonight with a film put on by those collaborators that I mentioned, so many to mention. And we give thanks for all of you who joined us. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, and enjoy.
Bronze monuments to slavery declare allegiance to a dying myth of white supremacy. In 2017, Louisiana state authorities bowed to long-standing activist demands to take him down. And yet the structural legacy of settler colonialism and slavery remains intact. It pervades the air we breathe. This footage shot by Rise St. James, a community activist organization based in St. James, Louisiana, captures a flare burning off excess pollutants at CF Industries, the world's largest ammonia production facility. According to Rise, flaring events are common and recurring, each lasting many hours at a time. The 75-foot-tall flame towers on its monumental stack, above the majority Black communities of Donaldsonville and Lemonville. It is permitted to emit ammonia nitrogen oxides, and PM 2.5, pollutants classified as acute toxics and environmental hazards. As the toxic legacy of slavery pervades the air, so does it invade the ground. CF occupies land once dominated by 3 sugarcane plantations, where enslaved people were worked to death and buried on these grounds. All along the Mississippi River, the luxurious manners of slave masters are preserved by historians, romanticized by tourists, and celebrated as wedding venues for a white elite. Meanwhile, the cemeteries of the historically enslaved are lost to a hostile landscape, only stumbled upon when industry breaks ground.
No more racism. No more racism.
My name is Sharon Levine. I'm the director and founder of Rise St. James, right here in St. James Parish. And we are here to commemorate the graves of our enslaved ancestors. We're going to stand together. That's right. And we're going to fight for Mosa. That's right. We will not allow them to take our ancestors out of this ground and put them somewhere else. Right. We are Rise St. James, and we're going to stand up for St. James Parish. This is our home. We're not going anywhere. Yeah. So Mosa have a fight on their hands.
Rise St. James commissioned forensic architecture to gather evidence in support of their claims for accountability and reparations by bringing visibility to lethal airborne pollutants and searching for traces of erased Black cemeteries that cling to the earth. If toxic air is a monument to slavery, how do we take it down? Rise founder Sharon Levine lives in the historically Black community of Welcome, at the heart of an 85-mile stretch of the Mississippi River, between Baton Rouge and New Orleans, known as the Petrochemical Corridor. Here, 200 industrial facilities produce some of the nation's most toxic air and highest risks of cancer. And air quality is only getting worse. Like the climate of racism, toxic air pollution is largely invisible to the eye, which enables politicians to deny its existence and deride residents' decades-long demands for justice. In the 1980s, environmental justice activists nicknamed the region Cancer Alley. Today, residents refer to their homeland as Death Alley. Each and every plant occupies the footprints of fallow sugarcane plantations. Death Alley is a continuum of environmental racism spanning 300 years. After emancipation, small towns grew from rows of plantation slave quarters. These free towns have become today's fence-line communities, sharing property lines with massive industrial facilities. This racialized spatial pattern is contiguous with Death Alley. The community of Lyons was a quiet rural free town until the intrusion of Marathon Petroleum Company and Cargill Inc. Today, these corporations own all of Lyons, save for 5 homes. 2 historic Black cemeteries are surrounded by industry. Marathon even owns a portion of one of them. While a picture of dispossession comes into focus, surviving residents must also contend with unseen occupying forces. We asked Earthworks, an environmental action group, to employ a technique called optical gas imaging to bring invisible hydrocarbons into the visible register. We cross-referenced a photograph captured by our field technician with Marathon's permit documents and determined the contents of the tank. Along with this mix of toxic pollutants it is emitting. What begins at the scale of a single tank seeps across broad geographies and dozens of communities. Additional techniques can expand the scale of analysis, revealing the extent of this chemical assault. The Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality maintains a database of all permitted sources of toxic and criteria air pollutants. We focused on 6: chloroprene, ethylene oxide, benzene, ammonia, nitrogen oxides, and PM2.5. We developed a 3D fluid dynamics simulation of these pollutants using meteorological data from a local weather station over a period of 12 hours. The pollutants linger in the air, following the speed and direction of the wind. In July and August, the prevailing wind blows from the southwest. From September to November, the prevailing wind blows from the northeast. For approximately 6 months of the year, the prevailing wind blows from the southeast. From this simulation, we were able to determine the average concentration of each pollutant for each wind direction. Revealing the suffocation of communities caught between the plants. When the wind blows from the southeast, the majority Black town of Reserve is smothered with high concentrations of PM2.5. And chloroprene. But when it blows from the southwest, the suburbs of Laplace are hit with the same toxic clouds. The southwest wind also carries thick plumes of pollutants downriver over the majority white towns of Gramercy and Vacherie, which have blocked corporations from constructing in their backyards. Our simulation illustrates the truism that toxic air doesn't obey political borders. And it captures a vision of the future. If local residents can't stop the construction of 2 new facilities on either side of Welcome. Formosa plastics would saturate Welcome with high concentrations of ethylene oxide, well above the standards set by the EPA's acceptable threshold for cancer risk. Louisiana's air quality standards are among the lowest in the nation. If South Louisiana methanol is approved, Welcome will be hit with high concentrations of particulate matter. The community of Lemonville is sandwiched between several facilities and breathes in high concentrations of PM2.5, nitrogen oxides, and ammonia. Scientists have yet to understand how persistent exposure to the combination of these 6 pollutants impacts public health. But residents on the ground have sounded alarms for generations. We can use our simulation to visualize toxic emissions at the scale of a neighborhood. As from this community garden in Lemonville, where residents recall decades of acrid smells and burning eyes.
Growing up as a little girl, we used to smell those many different odors. So we wasn't, didn't know no better then. And sometimes we would go inside and we would complain about having a headache or a stomachache from the smells.
You can still smell it now until today.
Right.
You were a little girl, so that means it's still doing it.
You're right.
They never stopped. They're probably doing even more. Because anytime she wasn't even outside playing. She passed in her car, and it all through her car, and she could smell it.
Yeah.
I feel like we're dying one at a time. And just like I said,
numbers.
We breathe, we feel like we're being wiped out.
My trees are turning black. I had to cut them down. We can't even make garden here because everything is bad. The water is even bad. I never drank water the whole while I lived in St. James. But right now, the problem is all of these tanks, all of the fumes that we're smelling, okay? I can't deal with that anymore because I know how sick I've been. I've been sick for too long. So I know I'm going if I got to just go. If they don't buy me out, I just got to get out.
When we breathe, we feel like we're being wiped out. In 2014, the St. James Parish Council passed a comprehensive plan to sustain the values of its citizens. It begins by reminiscing about a bygone era of luxurious living and delightful ease, when acres of land were counted by thousands and slaves by hundreds. It goes on to designate the majority Black community of Birdland as an industrial zone, even though people still live and die there. And it redesignates the majority Black community of Welcome as existing residential future industrial, planning my ancestral home out of existence.
Federal law requires petrochemical companies to identify historic sites, including cemeteries, that would be threatened by their development. They hire for-profit archaeological firms to survey the field. We have studied over 50 field reports and have found a systemic lack of regard for antebellum Black cemeteries. Formosa's archaeology firm found nothing to impede construction, and Formosa's permits were approved. But members of RISE knew ancestral burial grounds were at risk. They hired a sympathetic archaeological firm to investigate and confirmed the presence of 3 cemeteries on site.
Formosa Plastic has repeatedly searched in the wrong place for the burial sites on the Acadia property. Even when told to go back and look again, the firm that Formosa Plastics engaged looked in the wrong site.
A thin ribbon was ostensibly laid by Formosa to protect the burial ground. Yet it bounds the wrong location. Even before Formosa broke ground, 2 of the cemeteries on the property had already been desecrated by prior development. Large gaps in federal law leave cemeteries unprotected in the face of state or private development. If allowed to go forward, Formosa's plant would occupy 3 plantations. Each plantation has at least 1 cemetery for its enslaved population. There are over 500 plantations across Death Alley, of which over 200 are on the market for industrial development. Under Louisiana state law, cemeteries have perpetual protected status, but first they must be located. We're in a race against time to develop a strategy for recovering hundreds of missing cemeteries before industry breaks ground. To determine the probable locations of cemeteries, we need to travel back in time. We sourced and georeferenced aerial imagery from 6 decades. Using a technique called cartographic regression, we created a mosaic of each set. A picture of the past, prior to the era of petrochemical development, comes into view, enabling us to study the transformation of the land. To travel further back, we located, georeferenced, and analyzed 140 years of historic charts, maps, and surveys. We enter through a 1719 chart of indigenous territory, which colonists used to prefigure their genocidal dispossession. The land of the Homa people became the Homa's plantation. The manuscript edition of the U.S. Coast Survey charts the Mississippi River from Point Homas to New Orleans between 1874 and 1877. It is the earliest cartographic record we have located that depicts plantation components: the river, the forest, crops, structures, roads, plantation property lines, and plantation owners. And on occasion, it depicts cemeteries, albeit with an inconsistent symbolic logic. As with the aerial mosaic, we built the historic regional view, sheet by sheet. The 1878 edition of the U.S. Coast Survey covers approximately the same area. The absence of crops allows for easier analysis. The cemetery symbology in this series differs from the 1877 edition, while some previously mapped cemeteries disappear altogether. The final map series critical to our research was charted in 1894 by the Mississippi River Commission. It offers an additional insight. Contour lines delineate the gradient topography, which slopes from the river's natural levee to the back swamps, from the high-lying domain of the slave master to the low-lying world of the enslaved. Despite their detail, the 1894 maps do not appear to consistently mark cemeteries. While a few are illustrated, it is unclear why most are omitted. Finally, we sourced property surveys, archival photographs, architectural drawings, and archaeological reports, which enabled us to study the evolution of specific plantations over the decades. The maps reveal that plantations operated according to consistent organizational logics. To illustrate this point, our study is a composite of several plantations. The maps became the ground from which we grew structures as simple volumes. A plantation is equal parts industrial facility, farm, prison, death camp, and luxury estate. It was designed to enforce racial segregation, incarceration, surveillance, and forced labor. Capitalist tools wielded to maximize productivity and profit. We chose to fly past the slave master's big house and bring focus to the underrepresented back of the plantation, where Black people were forced to live, labor, and die. Rows of cabins for the enslaved population were constructed along the main plantation road, at a remove from the big house, surrounded by fields of cane. For the enslaved, each day began with the ringing of a bell to herald roll call at the industrial sugar facility. The facility consisted of a boiling house, a steam-powered sugar mill, and chimneys and vents, which spewed smoke and steam into the humid air. Over time, plantations were mechanized and outfitted with the latest technologies. The bodies of enslaved people were treated as mechanical tools, tortured and discarded if they fell out of line. During the autumn harvest season, adults and children alike worked grueling 18 to 20-hour work shifts in a race to beat the arrival of the winter frost. The frenzied pace was a product of the imposition of a tropical monocrop on a subtropical climate. Profitable cultivation of sugarcane demanded vast tracts of land, the clear-cutting of forests for timber to fuel steam-powered sugar mills, and a large enslaved population supplied by the domestic slave trade and breeding programs. Interviews with formerly enslaved people testified to pregnant women laboring in the fields throughout their term. If an overseer wanted to whip her, they would dig a hole in the ground to protect the unborn asset. Some enslaved children were born in the very fields where they would work their lives away. At night, enslaved people reclaimed the paths of their daily toil, repurposing the furrows between rows of cane to move clandestinely across the plantation, to perform ritual in the forest. As sugarcane became Louisiana's dominant crop in the mid-1820s, cultivated fields expanded exponentially, and the primordial forest retreated, giving way to a rigid Cartesian grid. As the necroeconomy of the sugar plantation reorganized life, so did it manage death. Sugarcane was notorious for being the most dangerous crop to cultivate. And Louisiana's sugar districts bore a negative demographic growth rate among the enslaved population. Slave masters would not sacrifice valuable land for Black cemeteries. So enslaved people were interred in uncultivated lands at the back of the plantation, at the edge of the cypress forest. As cultivated fields expanded, cemeteries became isolated islands adrift in seas of cane. Denied stone, the enslaved relied on simple wooden grave markers, which decomposed over time. But sometimes they planted magnolia and willow trees to mark the graves of their loved ones. Isolated clusters of trees or uncultivated patches of land that interrupt the fabric of agricultural fields are referred to as topological anomalies. The memory of the land can be recovered through our mapping portal. Some anomalies are found to be ruins of plantation facilities, while some are revealed as sacred groves. These sacred groves are often the only surviving traces of antebellum Black burial grounds. As development expands, anomalies are transformed and erased. Plantation logics are inscribed into the surface of the earth. Sometimes plants trace the contours of slavery's ruins, from industrial complex to sacred grove. We identified nearly 1,200 anomalies in the mosaic of 1940 aerial images, but fewer than 350 remained in 2021. Their erasure is the result of a persistent racist imaginary, which regards Black cultural sites as unworthy of preservation, or worse, as a threat to development. The surface traces of many cemeteries were likely raised prior to the 1940s. How might we recover their memory? In the absence of an archival trace, we can determine the areas most likely to contain cemeteries by considering multiple factors that bear on their siting. Traditional archaeology focuses on the big house and other relics of white supremacy. It considers the topographically elevated front of the plantation as a high probability zone for cultural resources, and a low-lying back as low probability. We have inverted these logics. We determined land at lower elevations to be zones of high probability for finding Black cemeteries. The 1878 maps reveal the extent to which the natural forests were cleared as sugarcane expanded across the landscape. Black cemeteries were established in a liminal zone between river and forest. And while we have no data on cemeteries beyond the forest edge, it remains probable that cemeteries exist within. Colonial land grants divided territory into private parcels. Property lines were drawn perpendicular to the river and extended 40 to 80 French arpents, or 1.5 to 3 miles toward the back swamps. Each parcel was oriented along a central axis, the main plantation road, and further subdivided into a grid of roads, field paths, and fields. Cemeteries near the river were located within 350 meters of the property line. Cemeteries toward the center of the plantation are located an average of 230 meters from the main plantation road. The industrial mill and enslaved people's quarters were bound to this grid, aligning with the main plantation road. Many Black cemeteries are located within 800 meters of the mill. On large plantations with fields that extended beyond the 40 arpent line,
for most is not coming here. Because God wants us to live, and He wants us to breathe clean air, drink clean water, and have productive soil. He don't want His people to die because of the greed for money.
We want reparations
for past and ongoing atrocities
against people and the earth.
Ecological reparations would span from the air
to the ground, from the graves to the trees,
from the land to our descendant communities who rely on the land to live.
We want a moratorium on industrial development.
We want jobs that sustain the communities and our health.
We want petrochemical companies to clean our environment.
We want agency over how these lands are stewarded. We want to live.
If toxic air is a monument to slavery, only ecological reparations can take it down.